This has got to be one of the most spectacular sights that I've ever seen in Australia. I've flown around this area before, but I've never been up here on the high country, on the ground itself. And you look back over that basin there, the St George Basin, and I reckon you could fit half a dozen Sydney harbours in there. This whole area is just so mind-blowing at this hour of the day. It's tremendous. You know when you're here that you're the only person within hundreds and hundreds of miles. Back there, we've got all the gorges running off right back into the bowels of the Kimberleys. And one of those gorges, the Prince Regent, which is back over behind that knoll over there, goes right up into the country that I'm now going to go up into. This is absolutely superb to sit up here and look at all this country. Mind-blowing. As George Gray tried to force his way across this country, he kept a journal. In it, he described the area as being ruins of hills composed as they were of huge blocks of red sandstone, confusedly piled together in loose disorder. And I reckon that pretty well sums it up. Gray would have found it very hard going. I don't envy him one little bit, particularly as he would have had no choice but to go up and down the gullies and the small valleys that crisscross the Kimberley. In these he would have found the rocks giving way to areas of lush vegetation. And if he'd known what he was looking for, a few surprises. There we go. That's what I'm after. Those tiny little fruit there. Those tiny little fruit are now world famous. I'll tell you how it happened. About 8 or 10 years ago, I was showing these things and we sent them in, had them analysed, and we found that the vitamin C level in one of those little fruits is about the same as eating 10 or 12 oranges. So they now lead the world in ascorbic acid. Again, it's a terminalia, and there are about 3 or 4 different types around northern Australia that produce this sort of fruit. Of course, that ascorbic acid is very good for coughs and colds and things like that. And if you look very closely on these branches, you'll find some little tiny green ants. And they're growing just over here. Anyone who's walked around northern Australia would have encountered these fellas in the bush sooner or later. Let me just get my feet sorted out. Here they are up here, swarming all over this nest, which is built up of the leaves and things like that. Because I'm coming near it, they're getting very, very active. And pretty shortly, if I hang around too long, they'll start to attack me. I think the first white people that I know of that they attacked in Australia was Gray's men when they put ashore up at Hanover Bay. You can see them walking all over the place now, and they've got 2 little nippers on the front that lock in and bite you. Aboriginal people found a use for these fellas. They'd open up the nest, break it open like that, pull out the larvae of the young ants inside, mash it up and chew it. I'm not about to do that because these fellows get terribly, terribly agitated. You can see them all sitting there, standing up on their back legs, ready to attack me as soon as I go near it. But the one thing you can do to them, one at a time, just grab that little fellow there, just grab him and bite off the abdomens. And they've got a very sharp, lemony, limey sort of tang. Not a bad thing for a taste. See this tall, skinny-looking turnout here? There's a thing called Terminalia grandiflora. And I only discovered him about 4 or 5 years ago up at Columbaroo. He drops these nuts, not now because it's out of season, but you can still find them scattered around on the ground. I reckon that this thing here produces the best bush tucker I've ever had. He hasn't got a common name, so I can't give him to you. I refer to him as the Columbaroo almond. He's tremendous. I'll just get some rocks and crack him open. No good. Rotten. Try again. These things are pretty hard to crack open. But they're really worthwhile if you can get into them. There we go. See that little tiny almond there? Very, very small. But it is absolutely overpowering in taste. Tremendous stuff. One of my favourites. I reckon if you could cultivate these things up and put them in a packet and sell them in a shop, you do pretty well out of them. They're really good. As well as food and water, you've also got to have shelter to survive in the bush. In this part of the world, that's not a problem at all. Small caves and rocky overhangs litter the countryside and make perfect overnight camps. But if you think you're the first person to pick a spot, then you're probably a few thousand years too late. Look at that. That's not natural. That's been put there. All those grooves have been cut in there. Probably, I'd say, by this sharp-edged rock here. I'd work it up and down, establish the groove, and then use that groove to sharpen up spear points and things like that. It's an excellent rock surface for doing that sort of thing, because it's pure sandstone. Pretty interesting stuff. Hey, down here, what have we got? That's a baler shell. It's obviously been brought up from the coast and probably used for carrying water or something like that. Obviously the Aboriginals did the same trip and journey that I'm doing at the moment. It's had a bit of a break at one stage and they've fixed it up using beeswax or spinifex resin or something like that to stop it leaking. I'll leave him back here. This country's looking its best right at the moment, but the rains are over. And pretty soon, it'll start to dry right out. In a couple of months' time, you'll be hard-pressed to get a feed out of it. Even in the good times, you can't just go around picking tucker off any old bush or tree. You've got to know what you're doing. A lot of the plants are very poisonous and require careful treatment before you eat them. Get it wrong, and you'll end up as bush tucker for the ants. There's a little baby pandanus growing here. Little spiral-shaped fellow. That's why they call him the screw palm. I guess one day he'll grow up to be like his mother here. But that's not really what I'm interested in. What I'm after is this vine you can see curling its way around the trunk and coming all the way down to the ground. Because it's about to die off, and that thing under the ground is what we call a yam. What I've got to do is clear this ground back because I can find the stem of the vine, and that's it there, running down into the ground there somewhere. So I'll clear all this back, and then we'll start to dig him out. There we go.